I'm William Prieto-Parra, the International Manager at BESA, the British Educational Suppliers Association. And we want to talk to you. We go here, Steve Whitley from Data Harvest.
Hi.
And we're going to talk to you about exporting and how the best tips about going to international markets and the do's and don'ts, really, of international markets. For those who don't know, BESA is the British Educational Suppliers Association. We work very closely with UKTI, helping companies to go overseas. So we work very closely with commercial officers in the embassies, British embassies and high commissions and consulates around the world. I am a Stan age 68, so if anyone has interested in how we can help you to go to other events international, you can come and see me at my stand. Okay, one of the titles here, it says, the best business practice to grow your business overseas. Straight away, there's no best business practice. You really need to go to each market individually. Go there, learn about the culture, learn about the way they do business, and then assimilate and try to localize your product with the right partner. I think that will be the key. Find the right partner in each market. Okay, I think rather than me talking long about do's and don'ts, I think it's better if you take it from somebody who's been there, has done it, and I think you're going to talk about all the do's and don'ts and all the mistakes that you have made.
Okay, thank you.
Steve.
Thanks. So I'm Steve from Data Harvest. We manufacture basically STEM equipment, science and technology products for use solely in education. We've been doing it for around 35 years. I've been with the company around 25 years. Feels like a lot longer on days like this. We have been exporting for about 20 years. And I suspect, like many companies, we sort of fell into exporting by accident. We actually had a phone call from a company in Poland who said, can you sell your stuff in Poland? And we said yes, and then tried to figure out desperately how to do that. We've got a little bit more organized since then, and we now probably sell in around 35 to 40 different countries, and more than half of our business is now overseas. And it's been an interesting path. From falling into it accidentally, after about 2 years, we realized that if we want to do exporting properly, we need to actually make some effort to work out how to do that. And at that point, I have to say, BESA were very, very helpful for us because they gave us that starting point into many markets by saying, well, we're going to an exhibition, why don't you come along? Not necessarily the perfect way to find a market, but a good way to go on market research. If you stand out at a show like this for 3 or 4 days and meet people as they wander past, you will begin to get a very good feel for what that market is and whether your products are appropriate. As we got more organized, we came into the realms of UKTI, and they gave us, and still give us, a hell of a lot of support. From the simple beginnings of running courses on how to export, how to actually get your products out the door, how to understand the terms and conditions of shipping and customs and duties and all those sort of things. And I know that it's still running the passport to export scheme was a very good starting point for us. And we've done a number of courses, and a number of my staff members have done courses with UKTI and the local Chamber of Commerce over years, many years, to get to understand those markets. In the last sort of 10 years, we've moved more to using UKTI for things like OMIS reports, which is the Overseas Market Information Service. If you're interested in a particular country, you can go to UKTI. They will do a report on that market for you. And it is that age-old thing of the more you put into the OMIS, the more you will get out the other side. If you simply turn up and say, what's it like in Czechoslovakia? You'll get an OMIS report that says it's really nice, you ought to come. You know, if you go to them and say, tell me about the education system, and do they teach STEM out there, and at what age do the children start school, and when do they go to university, and what percentage of them speak English? Really drill down, get the questions you want, you'll get the answers you want, and OMIS can be very useful. It also quite often enables you to make contact with distributors. And certainly our model is to work with distributors on the ground. Trying to deal directly with overseas schools is exceedingly difficult. Most schools are not set up to be able to buy and import things, so you need somebody on the ground to do the mechanics, and you also need people on the ground who actually understand and could support your product. Certainly for us, they're fairly technical products we're selling. They involve training, they involve support. We need companies out there that can deliver that. UKTI will never say go with this company, but they may well say, here are 3 companies you maybe would like to talk to, and that's really very helpful. And quite often, even if you find a distributor not through UKTI, mentioning that distributor's name to the local trade desk officer and getting the nod and the wink really helps a lot to know whether that is the right company you should be working with. And believe me, in some markets, knowing who to work with is the most important thing about that market. Very, very many markets, it's who you know, not what you are selling. That's the one thing I learned a very long time ago. Saudi is a wonderful example. Every company you meet from Saudi Arabia will tell you they are related to the royal family. Every single one. And they probably are. But working out which one is actually going to get that tender created and hopefully won on your behalf, that's the hard part. And that's where UKTI on the ground can help. Yeah. Do's and don'ts. First of all, if you're starting, pick markets that are easy to go to. I know that's a wonderfully bland statement, but the first thing I would say is distance is not one of the things that you should use as a judging criteria. You could say to yourself, well, France is on our doorstep, that's got to be easy. France is one of the few countries in Europe I still cannot sell a product in. Don't ask me why, I could give you probably lots of reasons, but it does not work for us. So picking the nearest is not going to help. One of our first markets, and still one of our most successful markets, is Australia. You couldn't really get much further away, but they have a similar education system, they have a similar culture, they speak the same language, mostly, and therefore taking our products into that market was a lot easier than, for instance, translating it into German or Italian or Spanish and trying to work out their education system and did we fit. The distance is irrelevant. At the end of the day, the guy from DHL will arrive, pick up your product and take it away. It's his problem to get it to Australia, not yours. So really, distance is not an issue. Matching cultures and matching expectations is a much harder thing. And that comes back to, again, finding the right distributor and understanding the market. And no matter how good Skype is, you cannot beat face-to-face, you cannot beat being on the ground and actually meeting the people, both your distributors and your potential customers. We first started doing work in the Middle East about 15 years ago, and I'll be perfectly honest, I was not very keen to go to the Middle East. I had this picture in my head of how difficult business would be out there, and I got very lucky. I actually had a contact who lives in Jordan, and we basically assigned him as our regional distributor. And it was his job to go and find people throughout the Middle East on our behalf. The advantage for me was, although he was Jordanian and Arabic, obviously, he had been educated in both the US and Australia, very Western outlook on life, and so it was very easy for me to culturally connect with him. And I saw him very much as the bridge to get me into the Middle East and hopefully mean I didn't have to go there. That proved entirely wrong, because one of the first things I realized about the culture in the Middle East is if you're going to do business, you have to start by having a friendship. And the Middle Eastern companies that we wanted to deal with wanted to meet the principal of the company to make sure that they were happy to deal with us. So I find myself getting on an airplane and flying all around the Middle East, meeting all these companies and subsequently meeting the ministers and various other people, because they also want to know who the company is that they might be dealing with. So I spend a lot of time in the Middle East with my Jordanian colleague. Having said that, I found that I actually love the Middle East, and it's one of my favorite places to go to. So I was completely mistaken in my view of where it should be. Again, it's just understanding the market, understanding the culture, understanding the people. And once you get that under your belt, everything else becomes plain sailing. If you get it wrong, however, life can be very miserable. In the very early days, we had what was at the time a very large order to Mexico. And we dealt with this company purely over the phone. It was before the days really of emails and things, and we got this great order from them on the fax machine, and we put all the kit together and we sent all the kit out there, and we were very happy until about a week after it all arrived. We got a very upset phone call from the Mexicans saying nothing works, it's all horrible, you're going to have to take it all back, we want our money back. It was a complete nightmare situation. We got on a plane, we flew out to Mexico, and we discovered that what was really happening is they had no idea how to use the equipment. And so from their perspective, it didn't work. We spent 3 days teaching them how to use the equipment, and we left with a group of very happy Mexicans, and thankfully they kept the equipment. But I remember as we walked out the door, the very sage gentleman that owned the Mexican company looked at me and said, you know, there's a simple rule. When you make a sale of this size, go and visit the customer first. And that's the one that we always hold in our head when we're deciding whether we should actually get on an aeroplane and go and meet people. It is so, so important to get that part right. I'll shut up and let William have a go now.
That's all right. Okay, thank you, Steve. I mean, Steve mentioned quite a few things about, for example, the OMIs. He mentioned about reports. They are fantastic. They can do reports for you. There's a lot of free information out there. So before you ask UKTI to do a report, find out what information is there, and then you can be specific what you're looking for. You can give UKTI list, I'm looking for A, B, C, D, E, and then when they give the report, you double check, did they answer this and that, and then if they haven't, then you go back to them. However, not everything is a report. It could be a program arrangement, which I think is a little bit more expensive, more time consuming for yourself, but I think it's better because who better to write a report about a market than yourself that you know your product. So you go to UKTI and you say, I'm interested in this market, I want to visit, could you arrange me to go and meet people from government, potential agents and distributors, and visit schools, how to see how the system works, and then you go and do that yourself, and they will be able to do that for you as well. Picking the right market. As Steve was saying, distance is not, don't think, oh, Japan is far away. As Steve will tell you, but Japan is one of your biggest market. I mean, we got a British IT company selling IT to the Japanese. I mean, that is impressive. And the right market is by you talking to other companies, finding out what's happening in other markets. On your website, you can check which other countries have been checking your website and the interest that other markets have, so you can start looking there. There's a lot of free information out there that available for you. Once again, going back to the Mexican thing, the importance of the right partner, you partner with the right person in the country that you're working with. It has to be somebody who is in love with your product and knows your product and gets to know your product as much as you do. Otherwise, you just become a photograph of one of your products in page 300 of a catalog. Flexibility. You might say, Thailand is the right market for me. You go to Thailand, you do the exhibitions, you do the missions, but in Thailand you might meet some customers from Russia. That's exactly what happened to you as well.
That's exactly what happened to me.
And then suddenly Russia becomes important market, and Thailand was just the bridge to get to Russia. And that's the other thing. Just because you're targeting one market doesn't mean other markets are not open. However, be careful and don't start opening doors to every country, because you get to a point that you need to know if you have the resources and the human resources and the financial resources to do it. That's the important thing. Starting with exports, my main advice to people is exporting is, to begin with, exporting is investing money. You are going to but you're going to spend quite a lot of money in exporting. So if you're just going to do it for a while and then you think, oh, this is not working for me, and get back to the UK, all the money that you invested is lost. So you need to keep trying and trying and trying, and then once you click into a market, they will start coming one after the other. There's an talk to companies in the UK who are working with other partners overseas, and maybe you can work with them as well. I just want to ask Steve one question, and also if you have any questions. What is one of the biggest mistakes you have made when tackling a market?
Ooh, that's a hard one, admitting your mistakes. Mexico was way up there. You've got to look at markets in two different ways, or certainly we do. For some markets, when you're going in there, you have a market system that's very similar to the UK. Schools have got individual funding and they're out buying things one or two at a time. And that has an advantage if you find the right distributor who's got catalogues and sales staff going into those schools. They will build you regular ongoing business. For us, a good example of that would be Japan. My sales team out in Japan are going into schools daily and taking orders, and every month we get a nice order from Japan, and that happens every month for the last 5 or 6 years, and it grows organically, and it's very nice business. The alternative to that are countries where you're going to be facing a tender situation, where the ministry, the government, or a region is going to be buying for a whole group of schools because none of the schools have got individual funds. They are the most wonderfully tantalizing opportunities you can imagine because they usually have lots of zeros attached to the number. And you can spend an inordinate amount of time working on that tender. It is not unusual for me to hear of a country that is going to be putting a tender out in 3 or 4 years. And I will be going into that country and making connections, talking to the ministry, building up a groundswell with the teachers. Then the tender arrives and I might spend 6 weeks madly going around trying to get the prices right, get everything in the tender that we need, ensure that we meet all the specifications. It might involve me actually redesigning part of my product to match the new specification. Then you put the whole thing together and you cross your fingers and wait for the deadline and pray that you're going to be the lucky one. And if you are, it's brilliant. We've had it a few times. £1 million orders. You know, when you're a £2 million company and an order for £1 million arrives, it's a good day. The day after, you start panicking, how the hell am I going to actually make this and deliver this, and be careful of over trading, and we've very nearly done that a couple of times. But the most worrying part is if you put all your effort into those tenders, all your effort into that, and then somebody else wins that tender, it's a double lose, because not only have you lost that tender, but you can probably cross that country off your list for the next 5 to 10 years because they've just bought your competitor's product. They're not in the market for anything else until that product dies, runs out, wears out, whatever. So you can potentially put a lot of time and effort into a market and then not get back at the other end what you feel you deserve. And we did that with Saudi Arabia, naming no names, sorry. We spent 3 years chasing a huge tender, nearly killed us. At the end, the tender was never awarded. The Saudis decided they're not buying anything, which I have to say is not unusual, sorry. That could easily have been our biggest mistake. It nearly killed us. So yeah, be careful of the big numbers.
Okay. The other thing is, Steve mentioned, is about presence. A lot of companies go to a country, you find the right partner, fantastic partner, and then you just leave the partner alone to do stuff. That's a big mistake. You need to keep going to the market. You need to be seen. Another thing is about, I can say as being a foreigner, as a British product, be proud of the British product, be proud of the British heritage. You go to the Commonwealth countries, they are proud of being part of that. I mean, don't try to say we have the solution. There's no solution for education, but you might have an answer that can be adapted to the market. So that's the approach you have to make. I mean, for example, in Malaysia, for example, they are quite proud of the history they have with the UK. And people who have history with the UK, they're proud of that. I mean, I'm from Colombia. We have no history with the UK, but when British Airways stopped going to Colombia, there was riots in the street. We wanted British Airways to go to Colombia. So be proud of that. But I know what you mean. I understand you have to be a little bit more humble about it. Don't approach them with, this is what we do in the UK and this is the right solution. No, there's no right solution, but there's a solution that can be adapted to their needs. Also, when picking a market, I know it's very difficult. When you start exporting and you already have some markets and you start getting inside, but let's say you are just selling to the UK, how do you choose your first market?
That is a really difficult one. Over the years, it's been a combination, to be honest, for us, predominantly people coming to us. We are somewhat fortunate in that we sell a very niche product that there's really only 4 or 5 manufacturers of in the world. So when an opportunity starts to arise in a country, whatever country that is, a minister has stood up and said, hey, we want to do this. Usually within about 3 days, I start to get the emails and the phone calls from companies in that country who have hit Google, found there's 4 companies that sell such products and are obviously reaching out. In the early days, I would often make the mistake of saying, well, they got here first, they must be the best. Now, when I get an email from somewhere I've never worked with before, the first thing I do is absolutely nothing for about another 4 or 5 days and wait to see what other emails come in. If there's only one, well then it's fairly easy to make a decision who I'm going to talk to. But quite often, sit back and wait. You'll find that there are other companies out there who have seen an opportunity in their country and are therefore looking for that right product. Beyond that, I would say look at, as William mentioned, ex-Commonwealth countries. They not only tend to be fairly open to working with British companies and products, they tend to have a belief that English education system is still the best in the world. I personally agree with them. So it's an open door in that sense. And the other thing that is maybe not quite so politically correct to say is quite often their education system is very similar to ours, because we started their education system back in the colonial days, and it may not have progressed in exactly the same way as ours, but it's usually close enough that our products will fit with minimal alteration. But as William says, do not walk in the door and say, we have the solution. If you do that, you will very quickly find yourself on the way back out again. You've got to be prepared to change. We offer our products in 20 or so different languages. We've versioned for lots of different markets. You have to do that if you want to get that business.
Okay, thank you, Steve. And the next question before we ask people, okay, you chose a new market, you have a series of products. How do you choose which product you're going to take? And also, how do you choose how you're going to sell on that market? By a distributor, agent, open offices? How do you choose, or does the market tell you what to choose?
Certainly in terms of which product, the market will tell you that. I can give you a lovely example. Last year we went to Ghana. It's the first time I'd been to Ghana, and we were doing an exhibition because it was my way of finding out about the market. And I had rather naively assumed that my lowest cost product would be the one that they were interested in, because I figured price would be the key thing. So I got my lowest cost product, which is about £100, and I had got also the top of range product, which was about £300. The top of the range product had built-in batteries. At about 10 a.m. in the morning, we had the first power cut of the day. By 10:05, everybody in the exhibition hall was looking at my product because it was the only one that was still working through the power cut. And I left knowing that every school in Ghana, when it gets to buy a data logger, will buy one with batteries. They will buy the most expensive one because it's the only one that will work for them through all the power cuts. So they chose that product, not me. I perceived something very different. In terms of how you go to market, that's an element of personal choice. For us, we tend to always work through distributors. We did for a period open our own offices in North America, the single most difficult market in the world to go for, and after 10 years we gave in and we closed the office in North America. So almost everywhere in the world we work through distributors, but that's our choice. For other companies, it might be better to open an office, it might be better to work through an agent. Certainly when we get to the tender situation where there are big numbers involved, our distributors in effect turn into agents, because we end up being the people that are going to supply to the ministry. We are the people that our name is written on the letter of credit, and our distributor at that point will take a license fee or a royalty from us rather than buying the goods from us and selling them to the ministry. So they get taken out of that equation. Generally, distributors, but again, the market will tell you more about that.
If you decide to go with an agent, one tip is do not give them sole distribution of your product, because if the country is quite large, you need more than one agent. And if this agent has power of selling your product in the whole country, but he hasn't got the power to really do it, then you are kind of in a mess because you cannot find another agent. So never give full contracts to them.
It's the eternally complex question that I'm asked constantly. To be honest, in most countries, we do appoint a sole distributor. The advantage of a sole distributor, and they'll very quickly tell you this, is if they're the only person selling it, they will go out and market the hell out of it because they know they're going to get all the sales. The second you've got two people on the ground selling it, the distributors will show far less interest in going out and marketing it because they're always fearful that the other guy will come and steal their sale. And it really is a catch-22. So in the very large markets, as William says, North America, India, etc., China, I do not have a sole agent. There's no one company that can cover the entire country. And at that point, you may well start breaking them down into regions and giving sole distributorship, but only in a region. Or you have to leave it completely open and hope that they don't just fight each other to death over the price of the product.
Another thing that you mentioned is about financing an order. If you get a million order and you're at 2 million turnover, it's going to be quite difficult to finance that order. You can do it through your own banks as well. They will help you, but also UKEF, which is UK Export Finance. They will be able to finance you, so I help you with the cash flow. And I think you can get that information from UKTI.